Well, good morning. Thank you all for being here today. Appreciate it. I've got first of all, I thank you so much, band, for doing your thing up here. It's really nice to have the live music back. Are you happy about that? Yeah. So look forward to more of that. Next week, we've got the band back, but this time leading with the chorus, which should be pretty cool. So, anyway, and as no doubt you knew the need, we could use another guitarist. So please, please let me know if you know somebody or you are one that could strengthen that component, because I'm totally amateur and I know it. My feelings will not be hurt if somebody replaces me. So anyway, happy to help where I can, but we can do better. So as we get rolling, I did want to say, first of all, a huge thank you for your generosity. If you read my email this week, I gave you a brief update on where we are with our capital campaign. And just to remind you what we're after a total of $831,000, which is a lot of money. And the first phase, which included some roof improvements and some cosmetic things here and there, we paid for with cash, on time, on budget, and that was all because of your generosity. So thank you for being awesome on that. That's really good. Give yourselves a hand. It's really great. Now, this next phase is a whopper because we have our beloved parking lot to deal with. That parking lot repair is going to cost a lot. When they built the parking lot the first time, they were thinking about a church that would, get semi-heavy traffic twice a week on Sundays, and maybe a midweek thing where you get most of the people coming out. And the rest of the week was pretty lightweight. So they used 2 inches of asphalt throughout. Well, you know our property. We get used every day of the week. About 1,000 people flow through our campus every week for recovery, for sports, for daycare, for church, all those things, including heavy equipment, which you'll see piling onto our lot here for some more PG&E testing. But we can't get away with 2 inch anymore, and that's why it's looking the way it is, and why it's going to cost so much. We need 4 inches to last a long time, and that 4 inches of asphalt all the way around is going to cost $441,000, which is a lot of money. But look at it this way. This is how I think about it when I'm giving my own money to this whole campaign. We are putting money into something that is going to far outlive us, and I find great power in that. All these bricks that went all along these walls, other people paid for those, not you. Somebody had the vision years ago to cough up the money for that and to put the time in for that. And we're the beneficiaries of that. So I think, because we were faithful in our time, how might we be able to do that for somebody else for decades to come? And that thrills me, that I can be a part of something that long lasting. So I want to thank you for your support. We have $300,000 in our capital campaign right now to hit that 441 mark. So obviously we need some more. I'll give you some more detail in the weeks ahead, but anything you can help with, and those of you who set up the regular thing, thank you so much. We're going to need some help to get this done, but I am very confident we will get this thing done. That's a big, big goal, and we can do it because we're Crosswalk, and we can. So that's what's going on with that. Okay, so today we're talking about joy, seeing, and being, and the connection between those things. There is a connection, and I got some stories to get you there, some really profound insights from a range of religious leaders from many traditions, not all traditions, but many of them. And to start off, on the next slide, you get this great psalm. This is the day that the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. And then W.B. Yeats, statesman and poet, said, "The world is full of magic things, patiently waiting for our senses to grow sharper." When my mom was aware that she was on the early stages of dementia, she had deep conversations with my dad, who was a career pastor. And my dad, in all of his pastoral wisdom, I shared this a couple of times here, had great wisdom to share with her. He reminded her of that verse from Psalm 118. He said, "I want to remind you, this is the day that the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it." Not tomorrow, not 2 weeks from now, because we don't have that. It's not here yet. And we can be grateful for the past, but what we have is today. And so it's incumbent on us, every one of us. Are we going to choose this day to choose joy, to rejoice in what there is to rejoice about. My mom took great comfort in that, and I do too. And I also agree with Yeats. I think the world really is full of magic things. I think the presence of God, the presence of love, the power of shalom is at work all the time. And if we have eyes to see it, it will simply emerge, and we'll be overwhelmed with how much life and love abounds everywhere. To get us into the mood a little bit with this thing, there's a Mary Oliver poem called Mindful, which I resonated with a lot. She's not reading this particular one. She has somebody else reading it. It's a little light on the volume, Ted, so you might want to get ready for that. And here it is. So enjoy Mindful by Mary Oliver.
Mindful, a poem by Mary Oliver. Every day I see or hear something that more or less kills me with delight, that leaves me like a needle in the haystack of light. It was what I was born for, to look, to listen, to lose myself inside this soft world, to instruct myself over and over in joy, in acclamation. Nor am I talking about the exceptional, the fearful, the dreadful, the very extravagant, but of the ordinary, the common, the very drab, the daily presentations. O good scholar, I say to myself, how can you help but grow wise with such teachings as these? The untrimmable light of the world, the ocean's shine, the prayers that are made out of grass.
I love how she begins this poem. Every day I see or hear something that more or less kills me with delight, that leaves me like a needle in the haystack of light. You ever had one of those days? Yeah, of course you have. Have you ever not had one of those days? Yeah, right. So we understand here that some days, and I wonder, those days that you did not, was the world less alive? Was there less joy happening in the world? Was there less love at play? Of course not. So there has to be something here about how we choose to see, how we choose to see ourselves, how we choose to see how we might engage in the world. And that makes all the difference, I think. There was a time in my life when I was sure that I could do something that if I tried, I would surely die a terrible death. And that thing that I knew that I wanted to do but didn't dare do was to get on a bicycle. Do you remember being taught how to ride a bicycle as a kid? Do you remember how terrifying it was to ride the bicycle, right? How many of you can ride a bike now? How many of you should ride a bike right now? Different question, right? So, do you remember the person who showed you how to do that? It's probably maybe a sibling or a good friend or a parent. It was my mom. And I got on my brother's 3-speed with the banana seat that had a chrome sparkle in it. I mean, this was the 70s, right? So it was pretty sweet. And I remember my mom holding on to the back of that thing and just telling me, you can do this. You can do this. She was trying to tell me to see yourself differently, not to see how I'm going to die for sure, but to see that I'm a person capable of riding this bike. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to trust my mother. She loves me more than anybody I know. And so she's walking along with me, and I keep saying, we're doing okay, doing okay. And after a while, after I'd say we're doing okay, I'd look back. There was no mom there anymore. I was flying solo, and I felt so thrilled until I realized I had to turn, right? That's the next big freak out moment, like this. But lo and behold, with time, I was able to figure out how to turn on a bicycle and even stop without falling. Well, riding a bike, my back issues from many years ago have kind of caught up with me, and I can't ride as much as I used to, but I would find such joy getting on my road bike. It was like sailing for me, just getting out on the road and being that close to the scents and everything else, and I miss it because it brought such joy. There was a day in my life where I didn't think I could possibly be a bike rider, and then I was, because someone encouraged me to see differently. Now, that's kind of trivial, but I bet there are moments throughout your life where there was something that you couldn't see yourself doing, and somebody else spoke into you and said, I can see you doing this. Maybe it was, trying out for a sport or a choir or drama, or, choosing a career path or changing jobs or moving to a new city or getting into a relationship or getting out of a relationship or getting into another relationship. You know what I'm saying? Lots of things. And I'm wondering who have been those people for you that helped you see differently, which changed so much. I remember I was a sophomore in high school, and they were calling for people to try out for the musical Hello Dolly. And thought I had a pretty good shot at the lead because I could sing pretty good. Not Dolly, the other. there was another character I had a much better shot at. Horace Vandergelder, who plays opposite of Dolly. He's the one that sings Hello Dolly, and Walter Matthau, for some of you who might remember that great actor from a long time ago. He played that role in the movie. And so I sought my dad out for help because I knew that he'd been in some shows before and did voiceover stuff. So I'd been working on my lines pretty good. And he said, all right, well, let me hear what you got. And so I said the line that I had to do for the audition. And he was very supportive. But I knew by his reaction that what he heard was not a 60-something-year-old curmudgeon, grumpy and gruff. He heard a 15-year-old kid thinking that he was just needing to say the lines. And so he helped me see myself and my capacity in a different way. And he said, I don't want you to think about you just saying these lines. I want you to imagine, what if you actually were Horace Vandergelder? What would it sound like? How would you carry yourself in that moment? And then as further help, he gave me an example of what that looked like. Partly because he was close to being a 60-year-old curmudgeon and he knew exactly what it was like. But he became Horace Vandergelder in front of my eyes. And he said, now you give it a shot. And with fear and trepidation, didn't think I could do it, but he saw my capacity. I gave it a shot. The first time I felt like a complete idiot. Probably sounded like one. But by the third and fourth and 20th and 50th time of trying it, I became as best of a 15-year-old could, a 60-year-old curmudgeon. And I got the part, which was great. That set me on the course for being in theater for the rest of my high school career and into college even. He saw something that I didn't even know how to do, didn't know if I could do it. And because of his word, I believed him, and I chose to go into that. It changed my world. It changed my life. I'm a better speaker because I was in theater, because I learned so much in it. Well, there was a moment in Jesus' journey and his ministry where he recognized that he couldn't do it all by himself. He had all kinds of things going in him. He was sort of in midlife at his age of 36-ish, somewhere in there, 30 to 36, not exactly sure. And he was amazing. He was a conduit for the Spirit of God like we've not seen to such degree before. Kind of wherever he went, for the most part, healing flowed through his veins. Transformative teaching came out of his mouth. Just his very being changed the dynamic of whatever room and space he was in. It was remarkable. But he realized there was just one of him. And there were so many villages filled with so many people that needed to be healed in some way, physically or internally or emotionally. And so much to say that would change the way they saw the world and themselves and God. It would change their being and how they interacted with absolutely everything. And so he did a bold thing. He had these followers who'd been following him around the region and hearing him and helping him out. And in this particular passage, there were 72 of his followers. And he gathered them together and he said, all right, it's time for you to fly the nest. I am saying to you to go into the nearby villages. He gave them some basic instruction, but he basically was saying, you've seen me do all this stuff. You know the message pretty well, good enough. Get out there and do it. See what happens. And guess what? They went out and they did it. Now, I want you to think, if you were one of those early disciples, most of whom had very little education, very little theological education, most of them had day jobs, most of them were fishermen, perhaps. Now, there were some other carpenters, no doubt, tax collector here and there, people who came from a different sect of life altogether. And now they are being asked to be Jesus. How would you feel in that moment? You'd be like, no way. Next, you're going to tell me I can ride a bike, right? But guess what? They went out and it went incredibly well. And they came back rejoicing, full of joy because they believed what Jesus saw in them and it helped them be something different than they ever thought possible. They came back talking about all the Jesus-y stuff that they'd seen Jesus do, but now it was happening with them. It was remarkable. And Jesus had something to say with this. In the next slide, he says, Jesus said, I know. I saw Satan fall, a bolt of lightning out of the sky. Really fast is what that means. See what I've given you? Safe passage as you walk on snakes and scorpions and protection from every assault of the enemy. Now, I just want to stop here and tell you that there is a thing called metaphor, which is a really good word to learn because I don't think that Jesus literally was saying, so since you have this divine bubble of protection around you, go ahead and mess with scorpions, Carrie Nuccio, who likes to do that for some strange reason, or snakes. Don't actually do that. He's talking metaphor here. When he's talking about Satan falling from the sky like a bolt of lightning, he's just simply saying that whatever was in the way just immediately was not so big of a deal anymore. He said, kind of to frame that part, he said, no one can put a hand on you. But then he goes on and he gives some words of wisdom. He says, at the same time, all the same, the great triumph is not in your authority over evil, but in God's authority over you and presence with you. Not what you do for God, but what God does for you. That's the agenda for rejoicing. He's saying basically that it's not about results, but that is really not the point. The point of faith and working in faith has always been and always will be relationship. How are you grounding yourself in this being, this one who gave you the capacity and worked through you to do all that cool stuff? That's where the action is. That's where the magic is. Because when you are in that being state, you can more fully be an agent of God, of shalom, of love, of joy, of peace, everywhere you go in the world. But as soon as you lose sight of that and think it's just about performing and achieving, that's going to slowly fade. And it's going to be harder. So the Apostle Paul, there's going to be a screen in a second, but he understood this. This guy who actually at one part of his life wanted to kill Christians, literally sought out with authority to go round them up. He thought he was right. He thought he had it all figured out. He thought he was in step based on his worldview. But then he had a divine encounter that radically changed his life. You know that story. And because it radically changed the way he saw himself, it changed his very being. And he became, instead of one of the greatest enemies of this new group of Jesus people, he became one of the greatest advocates and champions of it. He said to one of his favorite congregations in the northern area of what we call the Mediterranean region, sort of Greece-ish area right now. They were called the Philippians back then. And he says, celebrate God all day, every day. I mean, revel in him. Make it as clear as you can to all you meet that they're on their side. You're on their side, working with them and not against them. Help them see that the Master, this God, this Jesus, is about to arrive, how he could show up at any time. Now, Paul in his day, he might have really thought that Jesus was going to return in the flesh at any second. But I think there's a broader principle here. If we really believe that God pervades everything and is always at work around us, which I believe, then I think the presence of God, the work of God, can show up at any moment. In fact, we've probably already missed a lot of them. And if we are conduits of grace and love and shalom in the world, what if we just started to help people think shalom could show up any moment? Love can show up any moment. Grace can show up at any moment. Perhaps people would actually see it when it happened and join us in our joy. Paul goes on and says, don't fret or worry. Instead of worrying, pray. Let petitions and praises shape your worries into prayers, letting God know your concerns. Before you know it, a sense of God's wholeness, everything coming together for good, will come and settle you down. It's wonderful what happens when Christ displaces worry at the center of your life. You know what Paul is suggesting there? He's saying that Christ, the presence of God, the anointing of God, that Spirit of God, can displace worry at the center of our lives. Have any of you ever struggled with worry, feeling overwhelmed? Paul is saying it is possible for that to be displaced by the very presence of God. Finally, he sums it up in this slide. Summing it up, all up, friends, I'd say you'll do best by filling your minds and meditating on things true, noble, reputable, authentic, compelling, gracious, the best, not the worst, the beautiful, not the ugly, things to praise, not things to curse. Put into practice what you learned from me, what you heard and saw and realized. Do that, and God, who makes everything work together, will work you into his most excellent harmonies. Paul had his very life changed by the way he saw himself from that divine encounter. And because he saw himself, he became a different person. And because he became a different person, he saw everything differently. There is a continual practice here, a shift between being and seeing that is really important. And I think there's something here for us to learn. There's a beautiful psalm. I'm going to show you the last part of it in just a second. But the psalmist says this: I bless the Lord who gives me counsel. In the night also my heart instructs me. I keep the Lord always before me. Because he is at my right hand, I shall not be moved. Therefore my heart is glad and my soul rejoices. My body also rests secure. For you do not give me up to the grave, Sheol, or let your faithful one see only darkness, the pit. You show me the path of life in these moments of grounding into her being. And then finally, the slide. In your presence there is fullness of joy. In your right hand are pleasures forevermore. There is fullness of joy in the presence of God. How well are we doing at tying in to that presence? Well, Jesus talked about this tying into the presence of God. And one of the ways that he expressed it in the 15th chapter of John, it's a very famous passage. It's the vine and branches passage. And I summed it a little bit here on this slide. He said, abide in me as I abide in you. Just as the branch cannot bear much fruit by itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. And then toward the end of this little section, he says, I have said these things to you, so that my joy may be in you, and that your joy may be complete. Jesus knows that in this abiding thing that we are asked to do, told to consider to do, not forced to do ever, but that's put before us by Jesus, has the capacity to deeply increase our joy. The Apostle Paul had more to say on this subject as well. He says in this very next slide, but the fruit of the Spirit, this fruit of abiding in the Spirit of God, of being close to God, of staying grounded in God, the fruit of that is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. There is no law against things like this. Those who belong to Christ Jesus have crucified the self with its passions and its desires. If we live by the Spirit, let's follow the Spirit. Let's not become arrogant, make each other angry, or jealous of each other. If you ever struggle being kind or generous or joyful, maybe we need to beg the question, how are we doing on grounding ourselves in who we really are? How well are we doing on grounding ourselves in the very Spirit and the presence of God? And what if Paul is right? What if we choose to do things that will ground us in our state of being? What if that really will change our eyes, how we see ourselves, how we see everybody and everything in the world? I wonder if grounding ourselves in the presence of God, what Paul also calls being in Christ, what Jesus is saying is abiding in me. I wonder if we are able to do that more effectively and often. I wonder if we'll begin to see more of those magic things that Yates says the world is full of. I think so. And this comes down, I know this is kind of basic because we talk about meditation here plenty, and we have you do it. We have a resident expert or two, and Dave Carney Brown, and others of you who are excellent in these traditions of meditation, and you know that it's important, and yet we struggle to do it sometimes. So I thought maybe if you heard from other people, from other religious traditions, then maybe you'd really believe it. So let's see what we got. Rumi from the Muslim tradition. He says, the quieter you become, the more you are able to hear. You know, if it was just some guy off the street and they said that, it'd be like, yeah, I know. We all know this is true. But because it's Rumi, we have reason to just pause on that, don't we? What is he getting at? He's not really talking about muting our headphones, really. He's not talking about obvious things. He's saying when we quiet ourselves, we have the capacity to hear things that we otherwise would not. Gautama Buddha said, peace comes from within. Do not seek it without. He's not saying don't be an advocate for peace. He's saying the source of that peace is not in the external world that we see around us. Mother Teresa said, be faithful in small things because it is in them that your strength lies. Mother Teresa, who, as some have said, lived in the armpit of the world and tended to some of the most horrific situations that we can imagine. An incredibly strong person. And she said, it's in these small things, these small decisions of abiding, of grounding ourselves, that gives us the strength that we need. Now, let me ask a question. Have any of you ever wanted to do more of this meditation, devotional work, whatever, but you just didn't have time because you're so gosh darn busy? Raise your hand if you've ever been too busy to really fit it all in. All right. Thank you very much for sharing that with me. There were some other busy folk that showed up in history. I want to give you some of what they had to say. So the next slide, we have the Protestant reformer, Martin Luther, said, I have so much to do that I shall spend the first 3 hours in prayer. There's a Zen Buddhist saying that says, you should sit in meditation 20 minutes a day. Unless you're too busy, then you should meditate an hour a day. On the next slide, we get Gandhi saying, I have so much to accomplish today that I must meditate for 2 hours instead of just 1. Finally, St. Francis said, half an hour's meditation each day is essential, except when you're busy. Then a full hour is needed. Why in the world? By the way, have any of you ever actually experienced that reality? That when you meditated more, when you focused on your groundedness, your being, that this somehow made sense? Have any of you ever experienced that? Yeah, a handful of you. Right. It's quite fascinating. Now, in my world, I don't know if you knew this, but I'm a pastor. And so a lot of my work is God stuff, and thinking about this. But man, I have realized the truth of this. The hard way and the easy way. The hard way I've learned this is, we're all about shalom around here. And so if I think long enough about a thing, I can probably think of ways that we can be more shalomy around here, do things that are going to help us be shalomy in the community and all that. And I don't need much meditation for that. It's a word, shalom. We can figure things out. We can read the headlines and ask questions. But what I've learned, and much to my chagrin, I haven't done this as much as I wish I would and need to. That when I actually do what these guys are saying, I spend way more time just sitting with it, centering, being. It's like in those times, it's effortless. I don't have to think. It just kind of shows up. And what I've also discovered? That in interactions with other people, if I'm trying to be shalomi, save the world, and I neglect that being time that is affecting how I interact with everyone and everything in the world, it's harder. But when I give that time to being and being centered, who I really am in the presence and spirit of God, it's like things just happen. Almost like Paul was right when he said that God somehow works everything together for the good. And so I tell you as a human being that I haven't always gotten this right, and I've missed it in times, and it cost me. It cost me time, strangely, here I'm thinking I'm saving time because I just don't have time enough for this, which makes me spend more time on the very thing that needs to get done. Anybody ever experienced anything like that? Yeah, it's fascinating. So I'm guessing that for some of us, we struggle with finding the time or the practice or how to do this. And so on the next slide, I'm going to give you a good verse to help get you into things. Because some of us, as much as we try, man, we just really struggle with breath. We struggle with that process. I know it's awesome. I know it's gold. I know it works. I know it works for so many people. But for some people, for whatever reason, just focusing on breath alone doesn't do it. We need something. We've done a practice here where sometimes we'll have you sing the word shalom or just say the word shalom because it's a great mantra. It's a great word to focus on. It's shalom, but it also ends in that om kind of thing, which, has all kinds of physiological things tied into it as well as spiritual. And so maybe that is what you do. You don't know what to do with yourself, then say or sing the word shalom just over and over and just see what happens. But maybe another thing you can do is use Psalm 139. Now, to give you some context in this, this is at the end of a psalm where, for the most part, the psalmist is just beside himself in awe of God. He's just thinking about all the things that God knows, all the things that God does in the world, and he's so excited about it. He is all in on this thing. But then something toward the end, maybe it's the verses right before this where he's kind of mean and a jerk, but then he comes back to this, and he ends his psalm with this. Search me, O God, and unveil my heart. Examine me and reveal my anxious thoughts. Point out anything in me that is not in step with you, and lead me along the path of everlasting life. Now I want to back out of the way so everybody can see this. Let's say this together right now, just to get it under your belt. Search me, O God, and unveil my heart. Examine me and reveal my anxious thoughts. Point out anything in me that is not in step with you, and lead me along the path of everlasting life. Do you think if you prayed this psalm over and over and over, just really thought this through with your day, do you think it might actually help you? Might affect the way you see the world going in? It might cause you to wonder, how am I doing on the way? How shalomy am I feeling right now? And how shalomy might I be as I go into the world? Of course. There's another way that this can help you, though. And this is a meditation technique, which I think is good, where we spend time in our being state and getting grounded. And then before we let it go, we start to think about the upcoming day. And with our breath and with our groundedness and our Christian vernacular, thinking about how the Spirit is at work in us and through us, we start to imagine what's coming in our day. And we think about, okay, after this, I'm going to do X. I'm going to go to work. I'm going to take a walk. I'm going to go have coffee with a friend. And I'm wondering, what would it look like for the Spirit of God to be more present in that? How am I going to see with the eyes of the Spirit in that? How am I going to live out of my real being in that moment rather than just do whatever the default is? That may not be so much that. And so I encourage you to do that. I encourage you to imagine what your day is before you get into that day. And imagine saying this about your day as you're thinking it through. Because if you're focused on this, you are more likely to realize it. If you're seeing this, you're more likely to be it. And then one more that you're not going to like, because I don't know any human beings that really like this next piece. But it is possible that you have some relationships with people that are complicated, that are thorny. Got any of those? People you don't, for whatever reason, don't get along great with, or there's tension in the relationship, or you just kind of hate them, even though you would never admit it out loud because we're Christian people. We're not supposed to hate anybody, but you kind of hate them. You kind of hate them. You don't really hate them, but you kind of hate them. You know what I'm talking about? And it could be real people, could be family members. That happens a lot. Could be coworkers. Could be somebody in your social group. I don't know. Could be a politician that you can't stand. And you're thinking about them all the time, drowning yourself in it, which is not helping you become more you-ier, is it? What would happen if you applied this as you're imagining your day and you come across in your day, what if I run into so-and-so? and all of a sudden you start to feel anxious. What would happen if you ran that possible exchange through this? Search me, O God, and unveil my heart. Examine me and reveal my anxious thoughts. Point out anything in me that is not in step with you and lead me along the path of everlasting life. On my worst days, I am not my best person. On my worst days, I am not the Pete that God has called me to be. On my worst days, I do not interact with people the way that this might remind me to. What would it be like for you if at the beginning of your day, especially if you know that you're going to be meeting that thorny relationship person, that you ran it through this first and you thought about this through your day? And again, not that you're trying to be something that you're not. This is calling you into a deeper state of who you already are and are capable of being. This is you learning to ride a bike. Somebody else sees the capacity in you. This is that. This is the Spirit of God saying, you can get on that stage and act like a real Horace Vandergeller, not whoever you think you are. You can make this jump. You can do this thing. The Spirit of God is within you. What would it look like if you took this everywhere you went? How would this change your being? And how would that being change your seeing? And how would those two, in combination with each other, surely add to your joy and more joy in the world? All right. I've got two more things to say, but first, I want to take a moment to listen to the actual Mary Oliver share one of her most famous poems, maybe one of its most loved. I think the actual title of it is Summer Day, but most people know it as The Grasshopper. Enjoy.
Who made the world? Who made the swan and the black bear? Who made the grasshopper? This grasshopper, I mean, the one who has flung herself out of the grass, the one who is eating sugar out of my hand, who is moving her jaws back and forth instead of up and down, who is gazing around with her enormous and complicated eyes. Now she lifts her pale forearms and thoroughly washes her face. Now she snaps her wings open and floats away. I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I have been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life?
Why is she talking about a grasshopper? Who cares about a grasshopper? What does that have to do with us? Okay, Carrie Nuccio loves grasshoppers. That's fine. It tastes great dipped in chocolate. I understand. I don't know. No idea. Why are we talking about a grasshopper? What does that have to do with living as a human being? It's because the grasshopper's being a grasshopper. Fully. Not trying to be anything but a grasshopper. So how about we start being us? What are you going to do with this one life of yours? And I've got great news. You are very, very powerful people. Do you realize that the life you have right now, you have cultivated? You did it. I know there were external factors, but at the end of the day, you're in the driver's seat for the parts that you can be in the driver's seat for, and you cultivated the exact experience that you find yourself in this spot. That means, based on your wild success to get to now, that you also have the capacity to do the things you need to do, to start a new chapter in a new day, if that's what it's called, to be a little bit less conformed by the world and a little bit more informed and transformed by the Spirit of God at work within us. And how might that change our tomorrows and all the tomorrows after those tomorrows? It's possible. I now need to say that it is also possible that you will do everything right. You'll do the 30 minutes a day unless you're extra busy. Then you're going to do an hour a day or an hour and 3 hours, whatever your equation is. And it still may not go great for life. There still may be things that just don't work right. And I want to tell you, it's not because of your lack. So feel no shame or guilt in that. We know that at the end of the day, the reason why we do these things is to stay who we are, our meest me, our youest you, to stay grounded in the presence of God. That's reward in and of itself. And it will get us through better, I think, than any other thing. So don't feel guilt or shame if you do it all correctly and right and things still turn south. Remember, while the disciples were sleeping on that Thursday night, Jesus was praying his heart and lungs out. He was so stressed about what he was praying, he like sweat drops of blood. And that very night he was arrested, which led to his death. Did Jesus make a mistake? No. I also want to tell you that you are a human being. And as we talk about this, devoting time into our being, you will go through ebbs and flows. Times when it is really easy and you're experiencing all the benefits of all that time that you've invested. And then there will be other times in your life where you have a hard time doing it. Let yourself off the hook. Let yourself off the hook. There are going to be things that you're forced to do in your life that you'll get distracted about needing to spend more time because you just have to do what you got to do. And so I want you to be aware of that. Know that we are human beings. The idea is not perfection. As so many of our recovery rooms say, it's about progress. And so how can you more and more find the rhythm of life, which includes this, so that your whole life will be filled with more joy? And I'm another person to tell you, I've already told you that I don't always get this right, and I miss it on occasion, and I regret it when I do. But I've also been one who has flat out burned out because of the pace of everything. And even though I was doing my best, that happens. And if you are in that spot, I know I had to work through in my mental health month because my therapist said, you shall take a month off or your wife will leave you. And you may not ever have a job to return to because you'll be too spent. And so I took it seriously. And the first 2 weeks of that month were dealing with my own shame and guilt that I failed. And so I'm telling you, I'm saving you 2 weeks of grief. Let it go. You're a human being. Sometimes life is so hard. And you'll do everything the best you can, but life can be overwhelming. There's a reason why one of the top 10 commandments of God in the Older Testament is take a day off, for Pete's sake. Take a Sabbath where you're just being and resting. There's a reason why there's instruction in this ancient book called the Bible to let the fields lie fallow for a while, to re-energize. There's a reason why these things are there. There's a reason why these things need to happen. So honor them. And stop beating yourself up because you aren't perfect. You're a human being. Okay? Let's pray together. Dar, if you'll get us back to that final screen, we'll get to that in a second. I'd like to lead you through a guided prayer. Go reverse one. There you go. And we'll land on this at the end. But would you pray with me? Spirit of life, of love, Genesis of all creation, past and present and future. You who are known as love, you who are shalom, present. In ways we cannot understand, we can't comprehend, and yet we know enough. We know enough to reach, we know enough to trust. When you say you can, it means we can. When you say to us, I see something in you, we can believe it. When you say, come abide with me, because I want you to bear much fruit, much joy, much love in your life, it means we can. And so I pray, God, in our incredibly distracted lives, where we have more screens flashing at us than ever before in all of history, more noises, more noise pollution, more things going on in our head. Maybe not more turmoil in the world, but we sure know about it now more than ever. So many reasons to have crowded attention. May we hear your still small voice through the noise to come back to silence. And perhaps in the sound of silence, we will finally hear your voice again, saying, I love you. I believe in you. I'm with you. I am for you all the days of your life. God, as we think about our week ahead, as we think about our waking up, our standing up, our sitting down, our walking around, for those of us who are still working, for those of us who are going into the job, if we're raising small kids and thinking about those kids and how we're raising them, we're thinking about relationship with people in whatever sector at the dining hall or the lunchroom break or whatever. As we think about the people that are so easy for us to love, so easy to get it right with because we love them so much. But also for those people we're kind of meh about, don't really care either way. Maybe especially, God, for those people who we have tension, who's at their name we feel anxiousness. May the psalmist's prayer become ours. Would you raise your gaze and let's say this prayer to end our time together. Search me, O God, and unveil my heart. Examine me and reveal my anxious thoughts. Point out anything in me that is not in step with you, and lead me along the path of everlasting life. Thanks for being here today. You've been great. We'll see you next week. I will take any and all help to clear out these tables and chairs and to move equipment back into the sanctuary. Thank you. See you.